Guest, the Finance Minister, Zainab Ahmed, who's very kindly joined us this afternoon to talk about a number of issues, starting off with which there were 6 projects here that Nigeria was very keen on. What's the follow-up on it? What kind of reception did they get here?
Well, in April this year, we launched an Economic Recovery and Growth Plan Focus Lab. And out of that Focus Lab project, we were able to harvest investments of potential investments about 22 billion US dollars, 10 billion of which were actually projects that were ready to go, that just needed a little push for it to go. So part of what we hope to achieve in this 3-day session is to crystallize financing for 6 of those projects. One of them is the brass fertilizer project, and there's also the geometric hydroelectric power project, and 4 others. It's important to us because the power projects bring about a potential for us to obviate the power deficit that we have in the country. The brass fertilizer project, on the other hand, expands the already existing fertilizer production capacity that we have in our country. Even though we have up to 22 fertilizer plants that are producing, but there's still a gap. So it's important for us that the deals for these 2 projects especially are closed within these 3 days. And we hope that that will happen. If it does, it becomes a very big boost for our economy.
I'd like you to speak to, the kind of feedback you're getting from investors, and then secondly, talk to, how this, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the Focus Labs, how that is helping to, get these projects to the stage where they are bankable.
So what the Focus Lab did for us is to give us an opportunity to identify why the investments were not coming through. So it was a process that brought together, similar to what we have here in these 3 days, investors, regulators, different kind of financial institutions, multilateral institutions, as well as local financial institutions. We came together and were discussing projects, and we drew roadmaps for those projects, from the large conception of the projects to financing the projects to various activities that need to be undertaken right up to commissioning. And in each step, we're asking, what is the constraint? What do you want government to do? So during that lab process, we saw decisions taken that would have taken a year, 24 months to have been taken, because we brought all the government agencies that are critical to improving business, and they were able to take decisions at that time. Some companies needed licenses, some companies needed lands to start their businesses. So we're able to solve those problems. So the major aspect that still needs to be done is raising the financing that these businesses need to be able to roll out fully. And that's why where this particular forum becomes very important for us.
Okay. And overall, you think, people were saying to me earlier, they were saying that, isn't it great to have an investment conference on Africa in Africa as opposed to in Paris or London or New York and what have you? How quickly do you think the continent's changing its perceptions in the mind of the world investors?
Well, to the extent that now when we talk about investors, we're not just looking at Europe or Asia, we're also looking within Africa, because the African investors are also coming up to speed. And our first point of call always is the local investors. Will you be interested in doing this before we go outside? Because we have found that success actually attracts success, and that one of the most compelling investment decisions that investors take is that there's a local business that is doing well and they have succeeded, and therefore we will be comfortable enough to go there. So we are partnering very closely with the private sector. We encourage them as much as possible to speak about what is happening in their businesses, so that people know that there is a lot of opportunity, that even though there are risks, that they're able to very well manage, and that you get one of the best returns of investment in Nigeria, despite all of the perceptions. One of the best places you can get the highest returns is in Nigeria.
I would like you to speak to the kind of further engagements we're to expect from from Nigeria, as you heard the finance ministry, with the AFDB going forward. Because we've seen the importance of priority projects where we need to focus on as a country to get things to the level where we need to be.
So AFDB is our bank. Together with South Africa, we are the largest investors in the AFDB, and we're looking to invest even more. It's a business that is doing very well. We're very happy with the progress that the AFDB is making, and therefore we're situating ourselves to invest even more. AFDB has become a catalyst of growth. When Nigeria went into recession, it was AFDB that was the first that provided budget support to Nigeria. And then the World Bank said, okay, we will also do this, and other people followed. So it became a catalyst for us, and today we still ascribe one of the reasons why we were able to quickly come out of recession is because of the support that our bank, AFDB, provided.
And one of the stories that's interested us at CNBC for many years now is Nigeria's attempt to rebuild a strong agricultural industry. I mean, we know Aliko Dangote, he's investing in it in the moment. And I know that the head of the AFDB, it's one of his dreams when he was minister to build it up. What is the Nigerian government doing now to try to stimulate what every country is going to have to do?
Well, let me say we're building on the good foundations that Dr. Adesina had laid. He started a fundamental change in the agricultural sector, a lot of very transformative things, and we're continuing with those things. We're looking at agriculture not just for feeding the nation, but as a business that is already contributing significantly to our GDP. Today, agriculture contributes about 23% to the GDP, and the potential is huge. There are more and more people going into agriculture at different levels, but especially at the processing value chain, which is where the 70% of the value is. And so as government, we're putting in place policies to support those businesses, to provide financing to them, to support them when they're going to borrow. We have a number of de-risking, risk sharing schemes to help farmers access more financing. There are various innovations that the private sector is doing that government is supporting. We're giving them tax incentives, tax holidays, so that they can continue to farm and continue to grow, because the largest employer of labor in our economy is the farming sector, is the agricultural sector. And we have a huge number of unemployed youths. We have seen young men and women actually going into farming, either as farmers or in various parts of the value chain.
Okay, very interesting work the AFDB is doing across the continent, but we understand that the infrastructure deficit on the continent is huge, and then just one agency, a DFI like the AFDB, alone cannot handle this. When you look at how organizations like this are structured and how countries add to the funding in institutions like the AFDB, do you think more needs to be done to improve their capacity?
Well, it is our assessment that the AFDB has done well, but they are reaching the limit that they must be recapitalized. And like I said earlier on, we're situating ourselves to be able to contribute to the new capital of the bank, because it has worked. It's an investment that is paying back already, and the more we capitalize it, the more they can do in terms of developing Africa. We have a huge deficit, infrastructure deficit. For us in Nigeria, the biggest deficit is actually in the power sector. And one of the main focus of the bank is actually providing support and funding to the power sector.
And in terms of infrastructure, they reckon there's something like 60 billion deficit in spending on this continent. What about Nigeria yourself? We saw this train system being, I'm told it was also mooted for Nigeria at some stage. Mm-hmm. How likely are we going to see something like that with the current fiscus?
Well, we didn't used to have trains in Nigeria, and now we have train systems that are running from Abuja to Kaduna, and also from the Abuja International Airport to the city center. We have train projects that have been designed, funding secured from the China Exim Bank, for train lines from Lagos through to Kano, which is in the northern part of the country, from Lagos to Calabar, that is on the west coast, and from Calabar to Maiduguri. So the whole of the country is being triangulated with rail lines, because simply put, we can't address the transportation deficit without rail. And from these four major arteries that are going to be built, there will be spurs. And the target that we have is that every state capital has a spur. So there will be train stations, train lines all across the country. It will help us to move goods from farms to market. It will help us to move produce. It will reduce the pressure that currently exists on our roads by moving heavy-duty traffic off the roads to the rail.
So enough can be said about the amount of work that needs to be done, especially when it comes to finance. And we understand that even as a government, there are still limits to how you can, leverage on funding. I'd like to look at what other creative ways you're looking at to try and get funding to, get some of these projects working.
Partnership with the private sector. Partnership with the private sector. I'll give you an example. In our budgets, we provide some seed funds so that we can set up 6 special economic zones. And what we have in the budget is just a catalyst. We hope to be able to realize tenfold that amount. We have provided in the budget also a seed fund to provide social housing for small to medium income families. 100 billion was provided, but our target is to raise 1 billion. We continue to do that for government to just be an enabler, and where it has to, it provides funding just as a catalyst, so the private sector funds can be crowded in with government funds.
All right, Chris, do you have anything you want to ask?
And I'm thinking as well, what about entrepreneurs? I mean, Nigeria is famous for its entrepreneurs. People say that people don't want to work for them, other people, they want to work for themselves. Will the government look into next year? What do you think you might be able to do for Nigerian entrepreneurs to help them up?
We have special schemes for small, medium-scale enterprises, and we're trying to make their businesses easier by reducing the regulation that affects their business. We're helping them to be able to access more financing more easily at lower cost. We're helping also to build their capacity. And in some cases, we're also encouraging big businesses to partner with small businesses. Like today, we had Dangote and the flour mills that have an outgrower scheme that helps to develop the value chain of agriculture. And those are consciously designed. We provide some subsidies in the way of reducing the cost of fertilizer, for example, and reducing the cost of borrowing so that small businesses can grow.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zainab Ahmed, the Finance Minister of Nigeria.